Consider Cannabis is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment recommendations. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
Once Cleveland enacts an ordinance, it's just, I see that's huge leadership. And that's gonna show the other cities that, this is not something that they can just shy away from. It's coming, and they have to deal with it.
It's time to consider cannabis. I'm your host, Curtis. This is the 22nd episode of Consider Cannabis. Now, last week, we spoke to an amazing young person named Emma Vogt, who uses CBD to treat her anxiety. Be sure to go back and give it a listen if you haven't heard it yet, but not right now, because this week we're going to sit down with Chad Thompson of the Sensible Movement Coalition and Priscilla Harris, who is working with both the Sensible Movement Coalition and the newly formed Appalachia of Ohio chapter of NORML. But before we dive into that, let's take a moment to acknowledge the past week before this one completely sweeps it all away. Many of us spent yesterday with family wrapping up this holiday season, and the day before that we celebrated 420 with the cannabis community. And as awesome as these last 2 days have been, I still have to tell you about last Monday when I walked into a dispensary and bought legal cannabis for the first time in my life. Netta at Brookline in Boston, Massachusetts was 3.1 miles away from our hotel and was worth every step of the journey. I was like a kid in a candy store. There was chocolates and tinctures and salve and pre-rolls. I had a great experience. I was able to place an order online, walked in and picked it right up, hardly had to wait. I decided to get something else, so I got back in line. There's a little bit more of a wait, but I was out the door in no time. I ended up walking 16.3 miles that day, but that was nothing compared to my awesome wife, who ran 26.2 miles at the Boston Marathon in 3 hours and 33 minutes, 28 seconds. Sally, you are an inspiration to me, and I am incredibly proud to be your husband. You are awesome, and I know this is probably embarrassing you, but I love you and I want the world to know it. But now, let's join our guests who are running a different kind of marathon, the marathon of cannabis activism. Let's sit down with Chad Thompson and Priscilla Harris, and we'll consider cannabis together. Chad, Priscilla, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to drive all the way down here and join us. Chad, how about we start with you? Could you tell us, when was your first experience with cannabis?
So when I was a teenager, I was about 14 or 15, and I just wanted to try and smoke some pot. My dad had always smoked when I was growing up, and I rationalized. I had a logical thought. I thought, my dad's okay. He seems like a normal guy. He smokes. I want to try it. So I went to a buddy of mine that was a great older and, asked him, hey, can you get me some pot? I'd like to try it. And we went, and Saturday night we said we were going bowling, and we went for a walk and got in one of those those self-serve car washes. And it was late at night, and we got in, and he had this crutch handle that he had converted to a bowl with a screw nut, a socket wrench nut, and we smoked out of this crutch handle. And I got to tell you, I was hooked, not addicted, but I liked it a lot from Jump Street. I really did. Day one, I thought, wow, this is really nice. I think I might be hyperactive, and cannabis just kind of seems to help me a little bit. And it just, is a very positive feeling for me.
Yeah. So the first experience, do you remember feeling like the medicinal effects of the attention, or was it just like the elevated, lifted feeling?
The very first time, it was more like I had the giggles, right? Okay. And there was a group of us, and it was more of a social experience more than medicinal. But, I felt really happy and blissful, and we laughed and giggled, and I thought, well, geez, that's great. I dig that. And so then, it was pretty much daily for the most part.
And how old were you again?
I was about 14 or 15.
14,
15. Yeah.
All right. How about you, Priscilla?
Me, I was a lot older. I came from a more conservative family, so it was like, oh, marijuana's the devil, gateway drug. But alcohol was okay in my family, so I grew up being able to drink from the time I was pretty young, honestly. I was about 14 whenever I was able to start drinking. I had my kids, and I wanted to get away from the alcohol side. My friend was like, hey, try this. It's not bad. I started liking it. There for a while, I was drinking every day. And I started slowly but surely just hitting cannabis and experiencing with it. And I told my family, I'm like, I don't see nothing wrong with it. This is pretty impressive. It's helping me. It's straying me away from the alcohol. So that led me into my walk with cannabis. Later on, my kids was removed from my home for about 45 days. Due to my cannabis use, I drug tested dirty for Children's Services, and I don't know who turned me in for it, but back then it was still that big stigma with Children's Services especially. So I ran away from it as fast as I could. My son, what year was that? Right around 2014, he had some seizures. And it landed us in the hospital, and I started really researching cannabis, and it led me back into walking down that road again, and I got involved with a gentleman. We got engaged, and he ended up having stage 4 cancer. So then we went even more into research of the RSO oil, and it has been a lifesaver to me, and I see how much it truly is a blessing to people.
Well, that's really rough. I mean, do you suspect that someone in your family turned you into child services?
I'm sure down the road it ended up being somebody in one of our sides of the family, but I never really, that's still their family, you know what I mean? And now the walk of it is my mom, who was very anti for the longest, and her husband. Now we're even looking into it for medicinal purposes for their self, now that she's getting older and going through some things of her own. So
Chad, how did your life progress from the initial experience to where you are today?
So I think that my daily use with cannabis really is what has led me to where I'm at today. So I always saw cannabis was always a big positive in my life, but yet I always heard it was a drug, and to the point where I at one point questioned, and I thought, why do I smoke pot? What's wrong with me? I feel normal. I feel okay. Why do I smoke pot? What's wrong with me? And I just had this paradigm of it's a drug, it's bad. But in reality, I noticed that it was a very big positive in my life. It made me more patient, a better father. It made me just a little bit more creative. It made doing the dishes not such a chore. It just was all around positive to me, right? And so I slowly came to learn that this is really just an herb. It's a natural herb that we were kind of lied to and given this false paradigm that it's an illegal drug. And so then in 96, when California legalized for medicinal purposes, and it became clear that states could, change marijuana laws, I kept waiting for it to come to Ohio. Years, decades, and I just kept waiting. And I think that progression of feeling out of control, wanting the laws to be different, knowing that they should be different, but feeling out of control to make any real change, and then discovering that I actually could make a change. And so that feeling of out of control has evolved into a feeling of control. And so we are able to take control. And so I've just dove head first into that effort to help us as a people, as citizens, gain access to this natural herb that is so helpful to so many people.
So what do you do for a living?
I sell windows.
You sell windows?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're a private contractor doing that, or?
No, I'm an employee for a company.
Okay.
I'm an employee.
Are they aware of your involvement in the movement?
I guess to some
I can
degree.
cut out as much of this as me too, though. You seriously, you just tell me, and it's not like...
No, not at all. No, I'm very open with what I do. Now, I don't advertise, but they certainly know I'm affiliated and I am an activist on some level. I don't think they have any idea to what degree, to be honest with you. But I am not ashamed by any means. I actually I was fired from a very good job, let's say. It was a 6-figure plus income a year salary position, and I was fired for my activism in cannabis. And up until that point, I was very behind the scenes. I did not do any interviews. Everything was behind the scenes, and yet I was. They discovered this, and I was fired. And so at that point, I decided, that's it. I'm done. I'm not going to hide anything. I'm going to just be open. If you're anti, then we're not going to associate, and that's fine. But anybody who comes into my life from here on out is going to know how I feel about it, and they're going to accept it, or they're going to move on. And so it's been that way ever since. And that was in about 2015.
How about you, Priscilla?
Me, I do some affiliate marketing, dropship marketing. We're actually opening an entertainment company. So we are doing podcast, radio station. So it's UBG Digital, and the entertainment plug is coming together. So it's James Johnson is one of the partners in that.
Very cool. So you are delving into the industry?
Yes. I applied with the state of Ohio to get a cultivation license and was denied. I also do the MCC course for the Cleveland School of Cannabis and the Columbus School of Cannabis. It's kind of their intro course before you sign on to their school. So I do the advocacy and policy class as well. Very
cool. How did you two get connected?
I went to a Toledo NORML meeting. That was back at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. Met the wonderful Chad Thompson. He told me about the Toledo initiative that had just passed, so I was totally excited. I was from Cleveland, and I didn't see a Cleveland chapter, so he got me situated with Brian Adams, who was the executive director of Cleveland NORML at the time, told me, hey, we could implement this in Cleveland. And from there, we just kind of built a working relationship.
So tell us about the Sensible Movement Coalition.
So the Sensible Movement Coalition is a registered nonprofit with the state of Ohio. But essentially, we are a group of grassroots activists throughout Ohio and into other states that have essentially formed this coalition to help improve access to cannabis. The most effective route that we've found thus far for a group like us with not a lot of funding, we're really out here on our own just trying to make a difference. We found that the local level, local politics is actually where it's at. In the cannabis game, everything has gone local, right? With local control, even in these legal states. But certainly in the illegal states, to change state law, it takes a lot of money, a lot of power and influence. And as grassroots activists, we just don't have it. So we're left with a really great opportunity, a really great option, and that's local municipalities. Local law can be changed in over 40 states by the citizens. All we have to do is write a petition, get some signatures, and it goes to the ballot. Now that's it in a nutshell. It's obviously, it's a little bit more complicated, but essentially it gives us the ability. It's at a scale where we can compete. We can do it. We're talking sometimes hundreds of signatures, maybe at most thousands of signatures, whereas on the state level, it's hundreds of thousands and just out of our reach. So the local level is really where we put a lot of our resources, a lot of our attention, and we're having a lot of success. We're changing laws. We're effectively protecting people from getting in trouble, where in otherwise legal states they would be, paying fines at the least, and in a lot of these states going to jail for small amounts of cannabis.
I'm a director of Sensible Movement Coalition. I head the Sensible Cleveland. Me and Brian are kind of like the team leaders for the Sensible Cleveland section of it, which we have a lot of exciting things going on around Cleveland and Cuyahoga County area. So I kind of handle that area and assist wherever they need me. We're also running a lobby day coming up on June 19th. We're sponsoring it with Appalachian Normal. So that's the new chapter that just started here in Ohio.
The Sensible Movement Coalition is not a part of Normal, right?
Correct.
Okay, so, but we're
collaborating.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome.
We, as an organization, we have a culture of open relationships with anybody. We as a group want to expand, not contract. Our mission is to change the law, and if we can work with other groups and other activists, then that's what we want to do. And this is a great opportunity to work with this brand new Normal chapter that's being actually led by a longtime activist. And this it's a normal lobby day that we're kind of helping and assisting with. This is going to be, and it's being led by Priscilla. And it's going to be amazing. We're going to have the most successful lobby day that the state's ever seen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. It's just heartbreaking to see people not be able to play nicely and just get a unified effort towards the goal of freeing the weed that is going to really help and change people's lives, and some people's even save their life.
Absolutely.
We got to get out of the mindset of what we can get out of the movement and really be a blessing to other people. It's about the unity, coming together. It's not just going to be Appalachian Normal and Sensible Movement Coalition to make this change. We need every organization across the state, anybody that hears us. We need their help. It's a cry for help. If you guys want this to succeed in the state and not be punished for marijuana possession charges, then it's all of our voices. It ain't going to start with me or him or her. We need to come together and really unite and stand strong at the State House.
So state law only trumps local law in Ohio when the local law directly conflicts with the state law, right? So if the local law legalizes something, the state says illegal, the state law would trump the local law. So how are you...
Well, I was very fortunate to kind of discover, I don't want to call it a loophole, but another option. And it was kind of hidden in plain sight. So before we did an initiative in Toledo, which we originally tried to get that passed in 2014, and we did not make the ballot. But before that point, we were all told as activists in Ohio that you can't do a local initiative in our state because the state law says that the two laws cannot conflict. And everybody just assumed that a local law would conflict with state law because up to that point, there were other local initiatives in the country, but they were all legalizing on the local level. So if we legalized, it would not be a real law because it would conflict with state law. So at that point, everybody kind of stopped. What I discovered was very interesting is there was actually cities in Ohio that were making the penalties more harsh than state law. So there was like Medina, where they would, instead of a decriminalized law, they had where you would go to jail for a joint. Meanwhile, the rest of Ohio was decriminalized. And so somebody got a ticket and sued the city. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled that, in fact, just to change the penalty is not a conflict. So I discovered that case just doing research, looking for what was possible. What can we do? And I discovered that case and I read it and the bells just went off in my head. And I thought, well, if the Supreme Court says it's okay to change the penalty and that's not a conflict, that means what we can do is leave it illegal and just change the penalty down. And then the question became, well, how low can we go? And then the paradigm was, of course you need a penalty. We got to have $1 or $25. But what we found is to have even a small penalty, the police still charge. It doesn't stop the disparity in racial charges. It doesn't stop the problem with having to go to court and take off and paying court costs. But when you lower the penalty down to zero, the police don't charge. And so it promotes a policy of non-enforcement. So
jaywalking.
Exactly. So what we've done is we've discovered this very innovative way that we're allowed to do, that we can do, and that's real. It's mandatory. It's enforceable. And so it's a whole new revolution when it comes to marijuana policy reform. So what we're trying to do is just get the word out. Hey, there's 40 states that can do this. And if you're sick of waiting, then you don't have to. You can get involved right now. Maybe you need 280 signatures in your town. So to be able to go out and collect 280 signatures and not have the police give you any trouble for up to 7 ounces, that's a fair deal. That's a fair deal. And I encourage everybody to get involved. And, now's the time.
And you started in your hometown?
That's right. We started in Toledo. We collected 13,000 signatures, and it made the ballot and passed by over 70%. And that was for not just misdemeanors. That was actually for all amounts of marijuana. That's when they voted on that in Toledo. They voted to take away the penalty for every single weight of cannabis that would ever be found in Toledo. Now, what happened was the state of Ohio sued the city of Toledo concerning the felony portions of that ordinance. And they, in fact, did win. So when we were talking about conflict of law, so to change the felony portions is a conflict of state law. So therefore, it's not a real law in Toledo. Only the misdemeanor portion is still in effect. But that's in Ohio, it's up to 200 grams. That's quite a bit of cannabis.
I don't know enough about law. Okay, marijuana is spelled incorrectly, for one. The law written, it's not even a real word. Mm-hmm. And even if it was spelled correctly, it wasn't even a real name of anything. It was a slang word. How are these laws even valid?
So that's the thing. You can do whatever you want until you're challenged. I mean, I just went and got a state ticket in a city where I shouldn't have got a state ticket. And essentially, they could give me a ticket for murder. They could charge me with murder today, even though I killed nobody. They can do whatever they want. You have to go to court to get any kind of justice. And a lot of times, that's where, lawyers are expensive and, they want to offer you a plea. So, they can do whatever they want, really. It's up to us to flex our rights in court. To
speak up and ask those questions.
Exactly.
You mentioned that you just got a ticket in a city where you shouldn't have gotten a ticket. Tell us about that.
Well, I shouldn't have got a state ticket.
You shouldn't have got a state ticket.
Yeah,
okay.
So they had the right to give me a local code ticket, right? Because the citizens voted to change the local law, which, by the way, is a right given to those citizens by the Ohio Constitution. So the Ohio Constitution says, it's called Home Rule. And what it says local cities can make certain laws. And also, in addition to that, local citizens can make laws, and they give the way to do it. It's by petition. So the way the law is set up in Ohio is that if the citizens vote for the law, that's the top level precedence in the state. Then after that comes the city level, the municipal level. After that is county law, and then after that is state law. We're told it's kind of counterintuitive that a local ordinance would trump state law. That's just counterintuitive. It's opposite what we're told. We're told state law trumps local law. And it does when there's a direct conflict. But barring any conflict, the local law takes precedence. And that is not me just saying that. This has been ruled upon by the Ohio Supreme Court. Essentially, what the Supreme Court has said is by lowering the penalty, it's not a conflict. And then they've also said when there's no conflict, then the local law trumps, which is different than when you look at federal law versus state law. Federal law always trumps, but it's not the same when it comes to state law versus local law in Ohio. Now, that's not true for all states. Each state kind of gets to dictate that. Like in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, the police would have the option on which law to use. It's just we're talking about Ohio here. In Ohio specifically, that is not the case.
Okay. So you said there's 40 states where this can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what those 40 states are off the top of your head?
No.
Awesome.
I mean,
Either.
yeah. Most of the states will actually. It's more than 40 actually. That will even less
Might
like
be easier to remember which ones. Don't do it.
Yeah. So Indiana doesn't allow for it. There are Texas, I believe, does not allow for it. There may be one or two.
Kentucky too.
In Kentucky, that offer no opportunity. Then there's some states where, like Alabama, Birmingham, there's one city that can do it. And then there's some states like where Ohio, like any city, any village in Ohio can do it. So there's varying degrees. And so I use the number over 40 because, I guess it depends on, but certainly close to 45 states on some level offer the right for citizens to write the law and change the local law by vote. That was a process called home rule, started in Missouri in the late 1800s and kind of spread throughout the country. And they didn't teach me that in school. I didn't know I had the opportunity to do that until I got involved in cannabis activism, and I was looking for what options I had. How can I change the law? What can I do? How can I be most effective? And I got very lucky and discovered that home rule exists, and it's very real.
So how many cities have you taken over in Ohio?
So right now, 11 cities currently have a no-fine ordinance, which is over about the current levels. I think over 362,000 Ohioans are protected that live in a city that is no fine, no time. And I can tell you, we are talking to all of the major cities, city councils on some level to enact a local no fine, no time ordinance in Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus. And so very shortly, over 2.5 to 3 million citizens in Ohio are going to be protected. While we're illegal in an illegal state, they'll be able to not get in trouble up to 7 ounces where they live in Ohio. Luckily, we have the option to go out and make a difference. And we're not only making a difference in Ohio, we're trying to spread the word. And so we're currently in 3 other states. This movement is spreading, right? It takes awareness. So once one city goes, and then people start to hear about it, and then another city goes, and it builds and it builds, and very quickly it can build into an entire state change in the law.
Yeah, right now you're going into West Virginia, South Carolina, and Missouri, correct?
Correct.
And how many cities are you working on in each of those states?
So in West Virginia, it's probably close to 8 or 9. In South Carolina, it's about 4 or 5. And then Missouri, that's a new state for us. And right now we're just working in Kansas City. And Missouri is where home rule started. And interesting, I would say about 2/3 of Missouri's population, the local prosecutors are not enforcing cannabis on a misdemeanor level.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They're just already ahead of that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's true for New York, Baltimore, St. Louis. I mean, there's many cities that are just not enforcing their marijuana laws. It's a thing now. It's a real thing. And that's what we are trying to promote is whether it's through the sensible marijuana ordinance where we decriminalize down to 0, or there's just a policy not to charge. We don't care. We're trying to get non-enforcement as a policy.
What would the federal government have to do to make you just say, all right, I'm done?
I got to tell you, that is something that I was just talking to a gentleman today who kind of predicted the over-under on that's about 24 months to do some sort of, decriminalization or legalization or, allowing states to, officially allowing states to change the marijuana laws, which I think would open up a huge wave. So, essentially, if we can just get access, I mean, that's really what it comes down to for me. I mean, I think the fact that this herb is illegal is ridiculous. And until that's changed, I mean, I can't see me stopping, the fight, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fun thing is once it's legalized, that's a whole other playground.
I know,
right? like that happened in Toledo when we kind of decriminalized there. It opened up the opportunity to kind of play around and do things in that city. And the idea was, well, do we go and work to continue to spread this, or do we do we just kind of hang out here and enjoy what we did? And ultimately, we kind of did both. I mean, we do have some things going on in Toledo that are very progressive, and we are spreading, this sensible decriminalization, no fine, no time decrim, as far and wide as we can, just to help people that don't know they have an option. I was there and I know how it feels, and that's why I fight tirelessly every day to spread the word and help.
Priscilla, I feel like we've left you kind of off to the side a little bit, and so I want to direct this question to you and apologize also. I definitely feel like you have a voice to contribute to the conversation, but I'd like to, if you don't mind, ask you about the Ohio 10th.
I was actually talking to a gentleman. I'm going to leave his name undisclosed, but actually I talk to a few dispensary workers regularly, and the patients are really suffering from this because, like he was explaining to me yesterday, let's say they get their card on the 1st, but they don't even make it into the dispensary until the 7th. It's showing that they're getting this allotment, and so they don't have access to it. They kind of just lose it. And so then the Medical Marijuana Control Program just changed the policy for dispensaries is that you have to file an online complaint with them to try to get that fixed, is how he was explaining it to me. So these patients are still sitting there suffering. I am in total disagreement with it. I would really like to see it fixed. And I do know there is some people advocating very strongly on getting that fixed for the patients.
One of my curiosities, and I hope you don't mind me talking about this, you brought up your fiance who passed. How much would he need to be in a treatment?
With his, if you went with an RSO oil, I forget exactly the recommended dose. It was 60 grams in 90 days was the RSO, which is very concentrated, heavy.
Would that even be legal in the Ohio law right now?
Oh, no.
No.
I was going to say the 90-day supply is roughly right around, I think it's 8 ounces for tier 1 or 2. I get them kind of confused, but there's 2 tiers, and you can have 8 to 10 ounces depending on the tier.
So you can, wow. All right, that's really disappointing. Sorry, that just really sucks.
No, it's very unfortunate for the patients. I wish we had better patient access. Yeah. There's so many conditions that are getting left out that people are still suffering. So that's why I'm so strong on the sensible decrim efforts across the state and getting it. We really want to see it implemented at a statewide level for people so that way they stop getting punished. The cards are very expensive. I know that was one of our issues. They moved him to Social Security. So at the time, Omni was the company, and we had to renew every 3 months. And there was no medicine available in the state, so we was still being illegal, but just possessing a card saying, hey, he does qualify. So we was kind of in this catch-22 because the program was so new.
Yeah, it definitely seems like you'd be vulnerable to some potential legal issues. But that's not really what Sensible Movement Coalition, it's just about decriminalizing, no fine, no time, right?
And we are defending our rights in court. So we've been to court several times. We're in court right now in West Virginia. So if a local municipality or a state tries to keep us off the ballot illegally, we will go to court. We will file suit to protect our rights, and we have won a federal court case in Portage County to get us access back to the ballot after we were pulled off illegally. And in West Virginia right now, we, on April 10th, just filed a federal lawsuit suing Salem, West Virginia for access, again, for being pulled off of a ballot illegally. So, and then, of course, I personally just went and, I'm going to engage in a legal battle. Hopefully, they don't drop this charge. So we, in addition, we're doing anything and everything we can to change the law and defend that law.
Yeah, he's not lying. I mean, I watched a video of you deliberately going in front of a police station and lighting up.
Oh, yeah.
wafting it in their direction.
Oh, yeah.
Into the door.
Yeah. No, that was the whole intent was to go get a state charge so that we can fight this and defend it and show that they don't have that right. And that's the only way that's going to happen. It just had to be done. There's no other choice. I can't just walk in and ask them politely. I tried, and so I know that I can't.
But you sell windows.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a lawyer.
I am not.
You're
a
not
lawyer.
defending yourself in court.
I will.
You will.
Yeah. In this particular instance, unless I don't have to, unless somebody steps forward pro bono to help, I will be forced to defend myself. I jumped into the Toledo case when the state of Ohio sued Toledo. And that's something that also as advocates we have to do. That's another battlefield, right? Like, you have to be able to operate inside the court system if you're going to participate in advocacy and make a real difference. The courts are really what determines laws. That's it, right? Like a law can say one thing, but that's not the law. The law is really what the court says that law means. And so it's very important. The legal system has always been a barrier, right, with the cost of attorneys, the cost of petitions to write the sensible marijuana ordinance. We couldn't find an attorney to do that for free, and we had no money. The lowest cost I could get was about $20,000 to write that ordinance, write that petition.
Wow.
And so that's what forced me to start to do this myself. It was just, what's the saying? Need is the mother of invention. Mm-hmm. And, it's kind of the same with us. Listen, nothing's going to stop us. Whatever it's going to take, we're going to do. And if that's, having to learn how to file writ of mandamus, then that's what we're going to do. Today with Google, we can find anything. We can do anything. It doesn't take a law degree to figure out how to operate in the court system.
Because if you know where to look, you're probably could find a lot of...
It's out there.
Yeah.
It's out there. And when you're determined, you're on the right side of good, then, things seem to work out. A lot of support now. This is a very, very popular cause. People are becoming hip, right? Since California legalized, medicinally, people have got a lot of awareness now that they just didn't have. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think nationally, right around that time, approval was about 25%. Today, it's well over 60%. That's huge in 25 years. It's awareness. I mean, once you learn about it, it's hard to be against it, to be honest. We were just all lied to.
What's next?
Well, for the Sensible Movement Coalition, we are on mission, and we're just going to continue to advocate and change laws and evolve and weave as we need to. So, we currently are most effective on the local level, so that's where we're fighting. But as things change and we grow, who knows, we may be a state player at some point. So, really, all I know is we are going to continue to recruit dedicated, hardworking activists to work as hard as we can to be the most effective change that we can be.
And if one of those people are listening today, where would they go to get involved? SensibleMovementCoalition.org. Go sign up, give us your name, your email, your phone number. Say, I want to get involved. There's lots going on. You can change the law right where you live. You can do it this year. You can be on the ballot this November. There's still time. Most cities in Ohio, I would say the average, if you take all 985 cities, the average number of signatures it would take, I would say somewhere around 200, 225. That's not a lot of signatures it's not.
To change the law.
I mean, I guess they still have to vote to pass it.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the beauty. We are the majority. That's a formality at this point. We can, if we get them on the ballot, we really don't even have to do anything. And the people will walk in and approve this 9 out of 10 times. So whether that's in Ohio, whether that's in South Carolina, whether that's in Missouri, this is a winning issue. It's the days of having to worry about that are gone.
Awesome. How about you, Priscilla? What's next for you?
So I'm also the lobbying advisor for Ohio Appalachian Normal. So the June 19th thing is a huge event for all of us. I can't release all the details to that, but I can say we are working on some phenomenally exciting adventures for Ohio.
And those are going to be announced when?
We're announcing it on June 19th, correct?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right.
So you have to be there to experience what we're about to dish out for the state.
Be where?
At the State House. We have the Rotunda reserved. We're going to have a lot of phenomenal guest speakers as well. A lot of other organizations are collaborating with us, starting to really show their support in what we're doing. So we really want to see 10,000 people there showing the support, showing the representatives that, hey, we are the majority. This is what we want to happen.
Awesome.
Exciting things coming for Ohio. I can tell you that. Very exciting.
So just one more time for the people who are either high or slow like me, the day is June 19th at the State House. At what time?
We start at 9 in the morning and it goes till 4 in the afternoon.
And everyone's invited.
Yes. Do you want to give a little bit of detail on Cleveland, how we're doing things? Or
Go ahead. Yeah, that's it. And you really, Priscilla really has really been an amazing lead in Cleveland and the Cuyahoga County area. And yeah, we have some very exciting news concerning Cleveland. And yeah, go ahead. I mean, feel free.
All right. So with Cleveland, I know last year we fell by a few hundred signatures, which was really a disappointment to us. So I kind of got discouraged. I had lost my fiance at the same time. So whenever Chad reached back out to me and was like, I know you're going through some stuff, but hey, we would like you to get involved again. So we started reaching out to all of the cities in Cleveland, or Cuyahoga County, all of the suburbs. So to get everybody talking, and Cleveland City Council finally reached back out to us. So we've been this is coming up May 10th. We have our second work group with them. Following that, we'll have a public hearing to legislatively enact the decrim, possibly.
Wow.
So that's a huge step. We're going to
really
be the
exciting.
first city. It impacts 385,000 people will then not be punished living in the Cleveland area. So
that's huge.
And everybody rolling through Cleveland. You know,
Yes.
You don't have to live in Cleveland to be protected. Anybody inside those city limits will, from now on, once that passes, be protected. No fine, no time.
And that's going to be likely for up this November?
No, it'll probably be before.
Really?
So that'll be city council enacted.
Okay.
Yeah, which will be the first. So Dayton was the first city to, as a city, push it to the voters. Didn't require a citizen's petition in the traditional way. And now it's leading to these cities that are just going to enact it. And so once Cleveland enacts an ordinance, it's just, I mean, I see that's huge leadership. And that's going to show the other cities that, you know, this is not something that they can just shy away from. It's coming, and they have to deal with it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you'd like to say to people who are listening who are considering using cannabis as medicine?
Well, I encourage everybody to try cannabis. I mean, it's certainly not for everybody. I speak to people that say they don't enjoy it, and you know, so certainly it's not for everybody. But I think a lot more people should try cannabis. It's a non-harmful, non-addictive natural herb that you know, makes you feel blissful. I can think of worse things out there, you know, and it's something that I would not mind my kids coming to me and saying, hey, you know, I smoke marijuana. I'm not encouraging kids. I have, you know, kids in their 20s. I have a 23 and 21-year-old daughter. If they came to me and said that, you know, they have another drug problem like alcohol, you know, that's gonna bother me. I mean, that's a real harmful substance. Cannabis is just, there's this paradigm that it's a drug, it's Schedule I, it's, you know, it's evil. And we just have to break free of that. And I encourage anybody out there that hasn't tried it to just give it a shot. And, you know, if it works for you, great. If not, no big deal.
I highly recommend it for everybody. I've seen it change a lot of people and get them off some of the prescriptions and up walking and full of life again. So I highly recommend. It gave my fiance an extra step to life for a while for the kind of cancer he had. It really, he could get up, he could still function. He was out petitioning with us across the state of Ohio as well, even as sick, but he used cannabis the whole way through, and it so I recommend it to people. Maybe it's not for you, but it's worth trying, slowly but surely seeing how it affects you and if you start to feel better and get away from the pharmaceuticals.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to drive out here and sit down in the studio and talk to me. Thank you so much. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate the work you're doing. And if there is anything I can do to help, I definitely want to. So thanks.
Thank you. No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If you would like to be a guest and share how cannabis has helped your health and wellness, contact us at considercannabisnow.com. If you found anything of value in this episode, please share it with someone else. Remember to subscribe for free and get every new episode delivered right to your phone. Join us next time as we consider cannabis together.